So everyone, my name's Gabe. Welcome to the Moga Bar Show. With me, I have Rich Boling. Am I pronouncing that right? Or
That's correct.
excellent, perfect. Rich Boling from Techshot. Techshot is a company that you most likely have not heard of, but you should have. They are doing some amazing things in the space industry and on working on some what I think are really cool stuff. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. Rich, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and TechShot and what some of the things that you guys are working on?
Sure. I'm vice president here at Techshot. I've been here almost 21 years. This summer it'll be 21 years. Grew up as somebody who just was enamored with space, right? So I grew up in the late Apollo era, and certainly most of my formative years were during the shuttle program, and always wanted to be a part of it in some way, and never thought that in my home county, which is the second smallest county in Indiana, I could find a company where I could spend 20 plus years in an industry I love. And then TechShot has been around a little more than 30 years now, and started as an outgrowth of our co-founder's eighth grade science project. And so, he's only a year older than me, and I feel like a real slacker compared to, this guy and his business partner that started the company back in the 80s. And so we've always been a company that builds and operates equipment in space. But until 2012, we were a company that would build a machine that would go usually do research or manufacturing or something on board the space shuttle or the space station. And we turned it over to NASA, and it was theirs. They did with it what they needed to. But
I'm
starting
insanely jealous.
Well, believe me, I'm grateful. I'm super grateful. Every day is a gift. I work with people that I love in an industry that I love. And it's interesting that the space industry, I think, because seems to be so public, like law enforcement, like education, other jobs where people think they know your job, and they
Yeah.
want to tell you how to do it. uh, and the space industry is it's different again, for somebody who followed it a lot, just as an observer and as a fanboy. Being inside it now is different, and good different. Um, but who, as you said, who ever heard of TechShot? And my old view of what the space industry was, I wouldn't have imagined there were companies like ours. Um,
Okay.
but only, Congress designated the ISS, the International Space Station, a U.S. national laboratory, just like Sandia or Brookhaven or, any of those, designated as an U.S. national laboratory in, I think, 2005. And then they hired a nonprofit to manage the ISS U.S. National Laboratory, which is sort of an entity apart from the vehicle itself, the space station. And so by hiring this organization called the Center for the Advancement of Science and Space, they now can open up the space station for private users. If you want to shoot a movie in space, if you want to do research for your company in space, if you're a NASA or a federal agency other than NASA and you wanted to use the space station for research or manufacturing, now there's a mechanism to do that. So in this modern era of TechShot, we started in 88, but since 2012, the model is we design, build the hardware, and then we continue to own it, and we continue to operate it commercially in space. So right now we've got a bunch of equipment on board the space station.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's different.
That's amazing. I mean, and the fact that it's been around since 1988. I'm thinking about 1988. And in 1988, I was rooting for the Dodgers to beat the Oakland A's in the World Series when Kirk Gibson hit his home run. And that's what I remember from 88. Earl Hershiser and his 56 scoreless innings. And I'm a baseball fan, if you can tell. And it's so I that's what I remember. And I'm like, I just feel that I'm like, how has nobody ever heard of this company? And then the other day when I saw this article on you guys, and I saw, biofabrication. I saw, I started reading up on it. I read the article on Christina Cook and, her going there. And the first thing, I sent it to a friend of mine and we started just talking about it, laughing, because you see the picture of Christina Cook now that I'm sure so many people have seen that follow, you know, NASA, where she has her hands in this glove that looks like an incubator. And so the first thing that we immediately said is they're making little babies to go colonize Mars. Now, what exactly is a biofabrication printer? I know what
Sure.
I think that I know, but I don't know.
Right, right, right. I mean, it's a little of what you think it is. So, like, we've got a dozen different machines for this for the station that we use on board the space station, and the most recent one, we're getting ready to launch a new one, but the most recent one before this upcoming launch, it's a 3D printer, right? But for cells, you print cells. I'm reminded by our scientists not to tell people that we're up there 3D printing tissue, because you don't print tissue, you print cells, and
Okay.
then you condition and you incubate into a tissue.
Okay.
Um, and then the whole reason why we're looking at it is to really looking at this organ shortage issue, where 22 people a day die waiting on an organ donor
Hmm.
list. Um, and one is too many,
Of
and
course.
and
Yeah.
this is a really tall challenge. And so why do it in space though? So on Earth, whenever you print with um, bio inks, because printers have inks, right? So we print with when bio printers print on the ground, print on Earth with bio inks. That bio ink usually has to be thickened with some sort of agent, some sort of chemical, various strategies, um, structures that hold up what you print, because obviously gravity will just pull it right down.
Hmm.
And even from one layer to another, if you have this really low viscosity bio ink, then one layer settles into the layer below it and it just sort of settles out, and you don't get a very thick tissue. It's not like nobody's trying to do this on the ground. A lot of people are trying to do this on the ground.
That's interesting. Now, do you have an advantage to doing like the advantage? Obviously, you know, gravity, you were explaining, to doing it in space. But now, what are the earthly implications to doing that? You're doing this on the ISS.
Mhm.
Can you then, I mean, it's not like you can FedEx it from there, but you know, bring it, you know, ship it to Earth whenever there's a transport or whenever
Yeah.
someone's coming back home.
Yeah,
How
you're
does
asking the
that
right
work?
questions. Yeah, you're asking the right questions. So partly, you can't just print it and bring it right back down, because it would just collapse. It would just collapse as if you did it here on Earth. So
Okay.
the actual printing, the process you see with Christina Cook doing, or Jessica Meir, or Drew Morgan, any of those astronauts who have helped us out, um, the actual printing process takes moments to hours for a really complex 3D
Okay.
printer. But what you see those astronauts doing, besides loading the bioinks into the printer, is they're taking a very special, what we call a bioreactor, and which is in a cassette about the size of a good old school lunchbox. And that bioreactor in that cassette is loaded into the bioprinter by the astronaut, and then they float away and go work on something else. And we take over, yes, from Indiana, take over from Indiana and control our device. And so we conduct the printing, we run the machine ourselves. And then after we tell them that we're done, they float back over, take that cassette out, close up the bioreactor, and put it into a different box, not the bioprinter, but another Techshot piece of equipment we call the Advanced Space Experiment Processor, or ADSEP. And ADSEP holds three of these cassettes that I mentioned, these lunchbox size cassettes, three of them at a time. And that's where, as our chief scientist says, pancake batter becomes a pancake. So that's where cells become tissue. And
Yeah.
our special bioreactor does to those, it does to that printed construct what you do to your body when you go to the gym. You provide mechanical stimulation to your muscles. Your body is giving a chemical and an electrical stimulation to those muscles. And that's part of how you grow them, right? You have all that stimuli. So our little bioreactor does the exact same thing. It provides mechanical, electrical, chemical stimulation to what we printed. And over weeks and weeks, then you get a solid tissue. Then you get something that can survive that potentially high G return.
Okay.
And we're hoping that some of the new spaceships coming online will have a pretty gentle return. You're talking about how do you get it where you need it, right? So
Yeah.
in one case, the Sierra Nevada Dream Chaser, the small winged spacecraft that looks like a little mini space shuttle of sorts, that starts flying late next year. And
Nice.
perhaps that could be loaded with space printed, uh, space manufactured tissue and landed at any place that has a decent airport.
Nice.
That's pretty
Wow.
far off. It's pretty far off, but you have to
But
start with
the
what we're doing
possibilities
today.
are there. It's just, and the fact that Techshot is working toward these possibilities, I think is something that's just utterly amazing. And a lot of people don't know this, and it's really cool. And I feel it's sad that a lot of more people don't know this, because I'm just like, this is potentially life-changing, stuff, the implications, the medical implications of you guys working on a lot of great science stuff that, is making space exploration and more discoveries possible. But you're also working on a lot of medical things that have medical implications,
Sure.
here on Earth for people that are
Yeah, even
struggling.
even artificial blood vessels, right? So we have a project where we're making artificial blood vessels, and that was originally something we were doing for the Department of Defense, because in modern conflict, we're finding that soldiers, unfortunately, are they're surviving injuries, but having far more amputations than before. Um, Largely, I think because of IEDs, where you might step
Yeah.
on something and both legs are damaged. In the past, you might take what's called a saphenous vein from one leg, take a piece of that vein from a healthy leg and fix another leg. That's how it works with sort of heart bypasses. You take a vein out of a leg and you
Yeah.
put that on your heart. But when both legs are damaged, you might even have muscles and bones that can be repaired, but the vasculature is really damaged. So we developed an artificial blood vessel. It's not bioprinted. It's actually made with a process called electrospinning. And but it happens to be something that really goes hand in hand with bioprinting. So if we're really going to make a very complex thick tissue in space, um, the the big blood vessels that have to provide nutrients to what we make have to be there. And so
Okay.
one solution is to use this electrospinning process, which doesn't have to happen in space. We can do it just fine on the ground. So those are
Okay.
two medical applications that we're doing, I think, that really complement each other well.
That's amazing. And, you know, obviously you're working closely with NASA, and the ISS and whatever governing body they have.
Mhm.
But here on Earth in the US, when you're working on these sort of medical applications, do you, because there has to be some sort of oversight from whether it's
Yes.
the FDA or somebody
Yes.
else. How are they vetting? Because you don't want to be in a situation where, I'm just going into recent memory, the companies that were working on the vaccine and things didn't go well and they lost a lot of money. You don't want to put yourself or the company in a situation where you're putting all this research in and you're not getting closer, or they're going to deny you based off of something that they find or something else. So what are the checks and balances like? Because this is pretty time consuming. This isn't just like,
Um,
hey, I'm working on a book report or I'm working on something. This is something that's done over many years and
yes.
through many different checks and balances to keep yourselves accountable, but also to keep things moving in the right direction medically as well.
Yep. And again, you're
What's
thinking the right way, because the regulatory process um, is um, complex. It is lengthy. I'm not here to tell you that it's uh, that there's regulation that shouldn't be there. I mean, I think we all want things to be really fully checked out and vetted before putting some space-made tissue into your body. But we believe we're on the right track because some of our personnel came from before coming to TechShot came from companies like Johnson and Johnson, um, and other companies who had a lot of dealings with the FDA regarding regenerative medicine. Our chief scientist had been the head of regenerative medicine at the University of Louisville before he came here, at the Cardiovascular Innovation Institute at the University of Louisville. So um, these staff members are sort of keeping us um, in line with what we expect. But it is going to be a long process, but with again the regulatory process. But just technically, um, this is going to take far longer than I think most people um, or anybody would want. You know, we want the
Yeah.
solution in place. We want it out there. We want it to help people. But honestly, this is going to be very, very, very long, decade and a half process before you start to see whole organ transplantation, things like that.
Okay.
And we have these companion technologies that go with it. We're developing in parallel, not just the artificial blood vessel, but we also have something we call the Techshot cell factory. Um, because ideally, you want to make a replacement tissue for someone out of their own tissue. That way, they don't have to have anti-rejection drugs the rest of their life, which have their own implications, health implications.
Yeah.
So, and in the current space flight environment, having access to transportation to and from the station that is thermally conditioned. So incubators, refrigerators on board the SpaceX Cargo Dragon or on board the Sierra Nevada Dream Chaser or the Northrop Grumman Cygnus, those are at a premium. And so we're developing this cell factory so that you can take up a small amount of patient cells, and you need billions whenever you're making thick tissue. You can take a small amount of patient cells of their skin, of their blood, and we take them and use them in the Techshot cell factory to drive them backwards into a stem cell. It's called an induced pluripotent stem cell. So you take a small amount, not a large amount, and driving it backwards into an induced pluripotent stem cell, then you can drive it forward again into whatever different type of cell you need in that tissue, nerve, vasculature, muscle, and do all that in space. And
Nice.
so that relieves some of these pinch points. So we've got to bring that technology along. We've got to bring the vasculature along. We have another one we're working on called PIL, the Pharmaceutical in Space Laboratory, to do some drug manufacturing in space. All these things have to come together, and it's just a long, long process, but it'll be
It's
never if you don't start, right? So
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely. Well, if you guys need a, human test subject in space, I will be more than happy to volunteer. Um,
oh, in space,
my
are you
wife
guys?
may be my wife may not be too happy with me, or she may be happy with me. I don't know. Go into space.
So would you go today if there was an empty seat?
I would absolutely go to that. That's been a child. I grew up in a imagination world where it's just that's I think that was the dream. The dream was astronaut, baseball player, and then
Yes,
real life sort of came in and
yes.
just knocked me down. But that was always, yeah, I absolutely would love that. It's like
Hey,
I
the
remember.
prices are coming down. It's only 55 million right now for an orbital flight.
Sure.
Coming down. Now, what about some of these like Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin, the suborbital flights? Would you do that? You can, that's just
I
the
would.
cost of the house. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just take another mortgage out. That
yeah,
doesn't. That's easy to do.
right.
Um, let's talk a little bit because what you were saying, this is a long ways away. This is
Mm,
decades long project.
yes, yes.
Um, is this something because this seems, like I'm again going back to recent memory, where Pfizer and BioNTech sort of
Mhm,
partnered up for the vaccine. Is
mhm,
this something where you potentially see a collaboration taking place with, Techshot and another company, whether it's for financial purposes or just
mhm,
for research purposes, and to just like push it through to the finish line? What are the possibilities there? Because yes, this is a decades long
mhm.
project. This isn't a sprint by any stretch of the imagination. This is something that has potentially long lasting, um, hopefully long lasting impact on the human race itself.
Right.
Um,
So yes, the answer is yes to all that. I mean, and I do get inquiries a lot, to be quite honest, through our website. Are you a publicly traded company? Are you interested in outside investment? Um, and maybe I would say never, but for us, our strategy is really just, maybe not never, but not now. We want to build
okay,
value for what we're doing. I mean,
sure,
I'd rather not do it too early, to be honest. And I think we fear perhaps a little or a lot of loss of control
of course, yeah,
for what we're doing. So I think at the right time, I mean, TechShot has spun off companies in the past. We've spun off an LED lighting company. It had nothing to do with space, but it was a lighting company for military tents. There was a time in our history where there was a bit of a pause in space work, And so we looked around and, who else needs things that are incredibly robust and reliable and efficient. And so we started doing some DoD work, and we invented this whole tent lighting system, which is super, super, super rugged and very energy efficient. Now it's a spin-off company. Techshot Lighting has its own products, its own, it does its own thing and has
Nice.
its own investment. So I think we see that model has worked. And when we're ready, um, the biofabrication process, whether that includes the cell factory, whether that includes the vascular grafts, we're definitely open to it. But I think we're looking to build value right now with these flights.
Nice. Very, very. I love everything that I've heard so far. For the simple fact that I love learning. So this was a very, very good for me, very educational, very informative. What's next in the short term? And because now in the short term, you know, Techshot has been, well, I'm not going to say in the public, but it's been in the public that knows, in the NASA public sphere, where people are reading about what everyone's doing up on the ISS. With Elon Musk, everybody sort of have their eyes again on space now. And Jeff Bezos has been around with Blue Origin, but now all the eyes are back on space. Now the space race is between SpaceX and whoever the competition is, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, whatever Russian company there is. What's next? Like, are you partnering with any of these companies, or are you just staying, like, hey, we'll license it, sell it to whomever it is that wants it. We're not exclusive to one or the other.
Right.
We have no bone in the race, so to speak, per se. It's just we want what's
Sure.
best for people.
Right. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier about how outside the industry it's perceived, and
Mhm.
um, Blue and SpaceX and all those folks that you mentioned don't really play in our space at all, and they're not that interested. I think if they wanted to build a bunch of payloads or a 3D printer, they would just do it. You know,
Yeah.
um, but we fly on SpaceX all the time. We're flying
Okay.
so the SpaceX cargo ship, but SpaceX has a contract with NASA, and we have contracts with NASA. So NASA just contracts the cargo services from SpaceX to the
Okay.
station. So we have something on every single cargo ship going to the space station, whether it's by SpaceX or Northrop Grumman. And so we've got we have some new hardware and some squid for a customer launching on the next SpaceX cargo ship
Okay.
to the space station.
A squid.
Lots of squid, lots of squid. And so we will be actually for the first time conducting the whole experiment for our customer on board the SpaceX Cargo Dragon on the way to the station. It'll be finished by the time it gets to the station, and then the hardware
Nice.
will transfer over, and it'll stay up there. The main locker the new one that we've built will stay up there. And so for although the others that you mentioned, so far they don't. Our niche of a niche is invisible to most people. They know that science happens on the station, but maybe there's had been a perception that it's all done by NASA,
Yeah.
or there's a perception that, there are probably 10 companies like Techshot that have commercial hardware for the space station.
Okay.
I think our catalog of space research and manufacturing equipment for inside the space station is the largest, I believe. I think I'm pretty confident in saying that. We've got more
Okay.
research equipment and manufacturing equipment for inside the station than anybody else. But who knew there were 10 companies, 9 other companies or so that
Yeah.
did that. Now we do have an agreement we've signed with Axiom Space, which was in the news a bit yesterday because of their private mission coming up to the International Space Station, with a professional Axiom commander and 3 private astronauts who have paid for the trip. I think they're
Nice.
spending a week to 10 days, I think, up there. And so you're going to see more. And so we do have an agreement with Axiom, because not only has that opened up the opportunity for us to put our own experiments and our own customers on board things like this crewed vehicle coming up, launching, I think, next February or so. But, you know, Axiom really is working toward building their own space station
Oh,
and
nice.
has an agreement with NASA right now, sort of a step one type agreement to dock their first space station module to the International Space Station. So right now, our agreement with Axiom, and they're great folks and they're great friends of ours, could entail at some point us pulling all of our equipment out of the space station, the International Space Station, and
Okay.
putting it into private space stations such as the Axiom module. Because if I tell you that we're a dozen years from transplanting tissue and the International Space Station is stated to maybe go to 2030 or so, obviously there's a bit of a difference there, a shortcoming. And so where would we do our stuff? Well, it could be in an Axiom module. We had been out and met
Nice.
with Mr. Robert Bigelow in years past, who has a private space station module docked to the ISS today, the
Nice.
Bigelow Expandable Activity Module. And then a couple of things that I haven't mentioned yet. We're actually building some equipment now that will be destined for the new, they're not calling it a space station, but the Lunar Gateway, right? So the
Lunar
little
Gateway.
small, yep. So it's a small module, small assembly of modules that are under contract right now to companies like Maxar and Northrop Grumman. And Techshot's building a biggest thing we've ever built. And it's a big 3D metal printer for space. And it also prints electronics. So if you are 240,000 miles away from Earth orbiting the moon and you need a part fixed, or you're on the surface of the moon or on the way to Mars or on Mars, having the ability to make metal parts in space is going to be really important. So it's called the Fab Lab, and that's something that we're working
Nice.
on now in partnership with a company called Inscript. So yeah,
I love it.
this is the golden age of space for sure.
I love it. It's like I'm not gonna lie. Part of me was hoping that the Lunar Gateway was like a Stargate sort of thing, take you, transport you somewhere else. But hey, this is good too. This is good.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know.
No, I love this. Now let's sort of move back to Earth for a little
Sure,
bit,
sure.
because one of the things about Techshot that when I was looking it up that I really enjoyed, you're based in Indiana, and you have provided a lot of jobs for the local economy that a lot of people maybe are not aware of. What is that like, being in Indiana? You said it's where you're from. So what's it like working for a company that is making such a huge impact, such a difference? And you're home. It's right in Indiana. Most people think of these jobs, they think of California, New York, Texas, maybe, Silicon Valley, but they don't think of Indiana, Greenville,
Right.
Indiana, I believe.
Yep.
What is that like? Are you guys like hometown heroes at all?
It's funny. Even in your own hometown, we go through these cycles where we get discovered. I'm going to pardon you. I'll save you the air quotes, but we get discovered, and then there's. I've been here 21 years. It's a process of being rediscovered all over again, with new reporters, new news directors come into town, and we get rediscovered. People I think pretty much know about us, and we've had great support from the state of Indiana, great support from our county, who never forget that we're here. The county and the state, officials tell us how pleased they are. I mean, we're creating high skill, high wage jobs in an industry that while there is aerospace industry, there are aerospace industry companies all over the country and in different places in Indiana, but not necessarily this part of Indiana. We're on the southern border of Indiana on the Ohio River. Louisville, Kentucky is our metropolitan area right across the Ohio River. And so we are a little bit different over here, and it's great. It's an inexpensive state to live in. Taxes, I think, are fair. We have support when we need it. There are great universities. Our graduates come from Purdue University, Rose-Hulman University in Indiana. I'm an Indiana University grad. And then again, right across the river, the University of Louisville Speed School of Engineering is great. We have a lot of engineers from that school, and then a couple even from the University of Kentucky. Kentucky, actually, I think I've heard that their number one industry, maybe export, or is actually aerospace, jet engines, things like that. And there is a company like Techshot, similar to Techshot, a little younger, in Lexington, Kentucky, about an hour and a half from here. And
Okay.
we're actually really good friends, and drive halfway, meet up for lunch. And, again,
Nice.
it's a small world. It's a small world.
Yeah.
But the high skill, high wage job issue is not anything or I think the state at all takes for granted. We have a great relationship with our congressional delegation. We're in the 9th congressional district here. Trey Hollingsworth is our congressman, and he drops by from time to time. And our senator, one of our senators, Todd Young, drops by. And if we were in Houston doing the same thing, perhaps would be a small fish in a big pond.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably would be. But our cost structure is, I think, pretty good. Houston is the 4th largest city in the U.S.
Yeah.
Greenville, Indiana is
I think you
smaller.
guys, I think you guys are doing very well for having been in business since 1988 and still doing what you're doing and doing it well. I think it speaks volumes. I think you guys have just, what little bit I know, and there's still so much research for me to do and still learn more about Techshot. I just think it's absolutely amazing. Real quick, Rich,
Sure.
before I let you go, where can people learn more about Techshot, learn more about yourself and everything you guys have got working on?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to have people kind of follow us. We're on all the usual social media channels, at Techshot Inc. On most platforms. And we'd love for you to follow us. Check out our YouTube channel. I admit it's not like most YouTube channels that get updates, every week or every month even. But we do put clips of our hardware, things that are coming up.
I've seen
And
them and they're good.
yeah, it's fun. It's a good time to, you can see some of our engineers floating on the sometimes people call the vomit comet, right? The parabolic flight aircrafts, where we sometimes test our equipment. Yeah, check that out. We have a launch coming up in June on the SpaceX mission CRS-22. So that's their 22nd cargo resupply mission to the International Space Station. That's where we'll fly a new payload called ADSET-2 and those squid we talked about. Watch for NASA to hold a press conference and about equipment on board that mission, and you'll see a lot more about the squid from NASA during that press conference. And we have an office in Florida now too. We've expanded there.
Oh, nice.
To the Kennedy Space Center, where we have about 10 people or so, including a pretty good intern group down there, where we have where the squid will be loaded into the equipment and then taken across the street to the Kennedy Space
Will
Center.
that be filmed? Because I want to see that. Like, part of me, I want to see that.
Yeah, maybe NASA
Right.
may come over and shoot it. I think actually NASA is going to come over and shoot that. So if you follow,
I want to see the
NASA
squid.
Yeah, they're really small because they're babies, and they actually get harvested in one specific bay in Hawaii.
Okay.
And so in fact, if you want to follow the Instagram account for that, it's called Foster the Squid. Foster the Squid.
Foster the Squid.
Foster the Squid. You'll see these cute fellas, and you'll see us prepare for the mission.
Excellent. Rich, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you jumping on with me. Thank you.
Gabe, it's a real pleasure to meet a fellow space fan and somebody who seems to maybe be as as curious about life and the world and how things work as I am. So I wish you the best success.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.